Hey, Greg, how are you?
Fine, Dan. Good to see you. You're looking good.
Nice to see you. Thanks for doing this, man. This. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and
It's
I
my
mean,
honor to be on your show. You always said good things to me, even though I ran out of small non-sequential bills to give you. So, but anyway, sure. And in honor of Dan Picaldi, here we go. It's the Canadian War Memorial for World War One. Thought I'd wear that for you.
Thank you. I've got a nice background here of major games.
About half of them there.
Now,
pretty cool.
Greg.
So, honor as always. What do you want to ask me here?
Okay, first of all, I've got a billion questions. Okay, and we're gonna have questions from what I call the peanut gallery, the guests.
Yeah, I've done this with Compass. I know how it works. So far away.
Okay, so first of all, you design a lot of these solo games, and let me ask you something. You were a captain, is that right? A captain of a company?
Well, at one point in time, I was a company commander, but I retired as a major.
Okay, so look, I'm ignorant.
Give me my right rank, dude.
No, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm ignorant of all that. So okay, so you got captain, and then you got major up here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does a captain do? Firstly, in terms, how many men does he take care of, and what does a major do? How many men does he take care of?
Okay, well, for example, when I was a tank company commander, I was responsible for 14 main battle tanks and 68 men and their lives. So
yeah, that's pretty wicked. Just there, that's wicked.
$20 million worth of equipment. It's essentially a lot of responsibility for a 27-year-old person. So,
now hold on. You something I didn't even think of. You just said $20 million worth of equipment. Now, are you?
Well, a couple trucks, a couple Jeeps.
Yeah, but are
tanks aren't cheap?
No, but do they tell you that, like, hey, don't lose tanks? Other than don't lose men, do they say shit like that?
Well, it's a little different in wartime. In peacetime, I mean, you're tortured about property accountability.
Okay.
I mean, it's like you better have every wrench and every spanner and every spare part and all of the radios and doodads and weapons. Oh my gosh, we had 68 folks. We had 68 small arms, not to mention 28 machine guns, and we had, because each tank had each tank had a couple of machine guns, so it was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really huge. Now in combat's a different story. Obviously you don't want to lose anything, but
obviously
that's not realistic to believe. I remember once a senior commander said, "We're not going to lose anybody in this fight." And I was like, not all leaders are, Patton or Rommel. Okay. They're not all necessarily super rock stars. All right. This guy was a non-rock star and was like, yeah, we're not going to lose anybody. And, of course, after our first guy got killed, I was like, yeah, don't write checks with your mouth that your ass can't cover is the bottom line of that. But okay, what it is. But yes, property accountability is huge. In combat, I mean, shit, we lost 2 Bradleys first major tank fight. I mean, that's just, they get written off. That's just the cost of doing business there. But anyway, so next question.
No, and so okay, so what a major?
Oh yeah,
what's he responsible for?
Well, I wrote as an operations officer, I wrote the battle plans, if you will, for combat for about 550 soldiers and 58 tanks. So a tank battalion's worth of stuff. Again, pretty major responsibility when your lives of 550 people depend on how well you can do your job.
And
writing battle orders is a little less significant than executing them. But
how old were you
when I did that? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
33, 34, I forget. Maybe 35.
And, look, I remember being 33, 34, and
I barely do.
did 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 you have the confidence and all that to write out battle plans and go for it, and this is it?
Oh, without question. First off, I was pretty young and cocky, but also the Army does a great job of training us. I was a graduate of the not quite done with the Command and General Staff College. I'd finished CAS Cube, which is the Combined Arms and Services Staff School. I just graduated from that. I graduated from the Armor Officer Basic and Advanced course, and Parachute School for that matter. I mean, I had plenty of training. This is all those years we're not fighting people. What are we doing? We're not just sitting around polishing our gun tubes and chewing bubble gum. We're training. We're practicing. We're going to school and improving our game. And plus I had years of experience at our Desert Warfare Training Center called the National Training Center. I spent 4 years there. In fact, I've told people because I was part of the OPFOR, the enemy force that fought friendly forces. So I had 27 rotations as doing this intense desert warfare training. Iraq War, first one around, other than getting shot at, it was very much like training. I felt extremely prepared. Probably most of my peers did as well. I would argue we were ready to rock that show, and we did. So yes, lots of training. I mean, that's what the Army does. They train and they prepare, and we were prepared. And there's anything good that the Army, one of the really good things the Army does is they force that on you. It wasn't always fun training. When you're spending weeks without a shower and no hot food and dirty and tired and low sleep. It's kind of just what combat was like. So
it's funny. I was
back at home. Here we go.
I was talking to my wife about this. I said I'm gonna be interviewing a friend, Greg, and Greg has some experiences in battle. And when I said that, I said, but you have to understand, it's not just the battle thing. It's walking, sleeping outside with nothing, bugs. I mean. And then maybe a battle happens when there's a wasp going around your face, and it's like, no. But then see, I'm not a soldier, so I think about shit like that, and it's like,
I had a bee fly up underneath my helmet and sting me on the top of my head. It's funny you should say that. That happened to me, but it wasn't in combat. But I would say that I think it does give me a good perspective, insight, and experience that I can apply to my designs, because I have sort of done it for real, and not I'm sure there's other game designers with combat experience, but it's part of tonight's, the talk of the show, or the topic, the human dimension, I think, in war games, which, if you were playing Army Corps or division level, it's maybe not as applicable. But in a lot of my designs, you've got individual boats or vehicles, aircraft. And so you want to try to, I think, include the human dimension as much as possible. And a lot of designs, at least I've noticed this, I gave this as a topic once when I was lecturing at a wargaming crowd at a college in Canada, no less, Miramichi.
Oh, wow, okay, New Brunswick, all right.
You know where that is?
Yeah, of course. There's a great salmon. There's a great salmon.
When I worked for HPS, they asked me to come up and lecture. So I said, all right, fine. But I said, because they had a class on designing, I said, look, here's another thing you need to think about. And this ties into the human dimension. It's like, all right, Dan, I'll ask you, how, if you have 21-mile hexes on your map, and a M1A1 can go 42 miles an hour. Okay, top speed. How far can that M1A1 brigade travel in a turn? If it's a 1 hour turn. And you might think, well, 21, 42, the answer is 2, right? And the answer is no. That brigade or unit travels at the speed of the most confused second lieutenant operating inside that battalion. Okay, so that's the reality. It's sort of like the M16 rifle has a maximum effective range of about 460 meters by the book. Okay, fine. I can promise you, and I'm sure there's plenty of folks in the audience who fired an M16. Those little targets are pretty freaking tiny at the max range on the rifle range, which is normally about 300 meters. So, you know, should you be able to fire 460 meters in a game with your M16 unit? Well, you know, 250 is probably a lot more accurate as far as what the combat maximum effective range ought to be. You know, you're not hitting crap at 460 meters. You compare those, I'm telling you, those targets are pretty tiny at 300. So it's things like that. You can't really design necessarily, well, you can, but it'll give you bad results if you always use the book specifications for weapon systems. And again, you've got human beings operating, you know, these systems, and human beings are infallible and they get afraid. I can tell you once I got rocketed, and it was probably the most afraid I've ever been. And I started shaking uncontrollably. That bothered me. You have no idea how, once I got control of myself, I just now, this was never going to happen to me again because I felt so ashamed.
Because of your training.
Well, I'm a, you know, you take the king's shilling, you do the king's work. I'm paid as a soldier. I've been trained as a soldier. I shouldn't be here just shaking like a puppy. So I felt really embarrassed, horrible. And fortunately, in all the rest of my 13 months of combat, I had no problems. You know, driving through minefields, no worries. You know, which in retrospect, when I look back, I think to myself, God, I could have been killed, you know, but it's like at the time you're just focused on doing the mission. So I don't know if that was my point. As the Romans said, they had that expression, seeing the elephant. When they talked about soldiers who had seen, you know, Carthage's elephants, you know, that came over the Alps. So it's like, I think that was my seeing the elephant moment. And I think past that, I sort of was a combat veteran as opposed, and you know, it's like when you see the movies, you know, Band of Brothers or is a good example. Well, that's probably the best example. Something that, you know, where the new guys just get bumped off. Okay, the veterans know not to do stupid shit that's going to get them killed. So anyway, I that's probably the moment I saw the elephant, and thankfully it never happened to me again, even though I was actually got mortared and rocketed quite a bit in 2005.
Well, you know, Greg, the body has a mind of its own. Eh?
Well, yeah. But you see, you know, so many war games don't, I think, really account for the human dimension.
Right.
And they should.
I think so too, especially if it's a solo game.
Well, yeah. And again, more applicable, you know, if you're pushing around cardboard squares that are, you know, army groups, corps, not as applicable. But again, the smaller the scale, the more that it should. And some games do. I mean, you've got lots of games have morale. Morale is probably the key thing. It's not that I was so tight with some of my other guys, but it's more of this sense that you're not going to embarrass yourself or let yourself down. You're not going to embarrass yourself in front of the other guys, and you're going to do your mission. But definitely in the smaller scale games, you know, it applies. And I think part of my focus on, in a lot of games, I have skills that you buy and you get better. Part of that seeing the elephant kind of concept. Yeah, I played a lot of D&D in college. one could argue too much D&D, else I would have had a better GPA. But I think that, a lot of that kind of rubbed off on how I look at games and design. But the one thing that always bothered me in some of these games, let's just say it's turn 10 of a 10-turn game, and you need to take, that hex. All right. And that wins you the game. That gets you your victory point. So doesn't matter how many people you kill, slaughter, destroy. Oh, right. I pick the hex, I win. I don't know. That just always bothered me a little bit.
Me too. Really. Me too.
You understand? You understand my point, right?
Yep.
So, and that's why I like my games. I think it matters whether or not you survive. That's the game. You're the guy running that submarine, or you're the guy, running that Zeppelin or fighter aircraft. Now, I actually have a couple of 2-player games. Imperial Tide is a 2-player, card-driven.
And Ostkrieg.
Yeah, I was actually more of a helper on that design. I did work on the cards. The overall design was a dear friend of mine, Mitch Ledford. But he and I sort of did it together, and it was in fact, that was supposed to come out first before Pacific Tide, but he has a day job, so he got kind of slowed down. But so I have a couple of 2-player designs. This third one, Imperial Tide, but most of my stuff is solitaire. But I've always, it's kind of interesting. It's sort of like D&D in that when you play D&D and you shoot the ogre in the head with the arrow, and you're like, yay, and then he squishes you dead, well, that's it. So it matters if you survive the combat. Right. And so in my games, I like that aspect. And I think, people really get attached to their U-boats or Zeppelins or aircraft or whatever, their pilots. And I like that. And I think that matters. So I like to include as much as the human dimension as possible in my games. Because people aren't robots.
No.
I have a new game coming out, American Tank Ace. I think you can read that.
So yeah, let me say something about this whole your whole scope of designs. So you are a tank, for lack of a better word, you are a tank commander. Okay, just for lack of a better word. Now, U-boats, airplanes, Zeppelins, but no tank game till now.
Yeah, well, there's really 2 reasons for that. First reason was, I think I get interested. I love history. So I get excited when I learn about stuff I don't really know that much about. So that's why I went, U-boats, and that's why I went, Zeppelins, and I get holy crap, they had 100 Zeppelins, and I get to learn all this stuff.
Yes, I understand.
So that makes it more exciting for me. Tanks, I know about tanks.
I know, but your expertise,
I know more than I want to know.
But Greg, your expertise on tanks will make that game so personal, and the narrative is going to be, it's.
Well, I'm going to try.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the designer, and he was that, and it's like, oh my God,
I have been in a couple tank battles, so I do have a personal experience and personal view on that. I think probably I avoided doing tank games because also I just I didn't want to go there personally. It's been enough years now. I think I can travel down that memory lane a little bit. It's one thing that Hollywood doesn't get right is they have all these big explosions, thermonuclear hand grenades, but which they're not quite like that. But tank explosions generally they're pretty spectacular when you see a AFE blow up. It's like something you never forget. So, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't want to go there for personal reasons. I mean, my best friend was killed in Fallujah, which I've mentioned before. Most people know that. Another armor officer who was working branch and material at the time. So I carried a lot of personal guilt on that, because there's plenty of times, 05, I had a mortar round land near me once. It didn't go off. I don't know if you ever saw that picture in Band of Brothers where the sergeant picked up smoking. It wasn't quite like that. I mean, I doubt I would have been killed, but I was within fragmentation range easily. And it didn't go off, and then EOD had to come in and blow it up. But that's, I just didn't want to go there before. But again, I think enough times passed. I mean, I'm due to do a tank game, I guess.
You're an expert, Greg.
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I mean, I did command a tank company at one point in time. I had 14 of them under my personal control. I've fired expert on tank table 8 tank gunnery. I mean, so I know tanks as well as I know any weapon system. So the thing I think the game will do right, which I've had already, is, we have it in testing. Guys are having fun with it, so it's pretty cool. And that's not me. But the game will have that'll do right is that I understand the dynamics of tank combat. All right, turret facing, hull down versus being exposed. What are the implications of all that? Being buttoned and unbuttoned, and when would you button and when don't you button? The differences of having the different rounds, and what the ready rack is for, and so I know all these things.
Okay.
The game was pretty easy to design on some regards.
So, Greg,
I'll tell you another thing too. But go ahead, you first.
Explain to me what the ready rack is. That always threw me off at Patton's best.
Oh, well, okay. Most of the, I don't know if you know, for example, in an M4 Sherman, there's 97 rounds of main gun. Okay, 97. That's a lot of ammunition. Main gun ammo. We're talking 75 millimeter shells. They're here. I'll show you a 105.
Bloody hell! Really?
Oh, come on. You don't have a 105 millimeter shell in your living room? It's empty. It's not, it's been fired. I actually fired this myself. This is back in the day before the Army prohibited people from taking these things. So anyway, yeah. But, this is decent size. So 75 would be about half the size, but it's nothing to sneeze at. It's still big.
Yeah.
Well, 97 rounds, that's a shit. No, I shouldn't say that.
I put a disclaimer. We're 18 and over. Say shit, piss, whatever.
Yeah. So that's a lot of ammo. So the thing is the ready rack, most of that ammunition, people don't realize you're not just surrounded by a giant wall of ammunition as the loader. The vast majority of that ammunition is stored in the hull. Okay. And there's a few rounds depending on the type of tank. In the M1 series, we had a honeycomb behind the commander. The back wall of the turret had a rack, and you would pull the ammo out of there, and it was awesome. That was the honeycomb is the place where you put your coffee thermos, because it would fit right up in there. It was perfect in training anyway, not in combat obviously, until you were short around, then you could. But the ready rack is, we used to have a little song, 13 rounds in the ready rack, doo-da, doo-da. So that's an M60 series. But in the Shermans had, I believe 8, most of them, not all, some had 6, but they had 8 round ready rack. And these are the rounds that are immediately accessible. So those are the ones that the loader is always going to load from first, without question. because once those are gone, then, and sometimes you have to spin the turret to access the panels to get some of this ammunition out of the hull.
No way.
Because the turret basket may or may not allow you to do it unless you spin it a little bit so you can get more rounds out of the hull. So the thing is the ready rack is crucial in a tank, because that's where you're shooting from. That's
Greg, hold on a second.
Sure.
Now, in the ready rack, you're placing your different ordinances, right? High explosive, armor piercing. So how do you know what to place where? Does it go from 1 to 8, or you can go from 1, 7, 6, 3?
No, it doesn't matter. All 8 are accessible.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, the ones that are closer to you physically are a little bit easier accessible, but you know, it's like the ready rack in the M60 tank series that I started out on as a second lieutenant. Those 13 rounds, you would generally load the ones you wanted up front, and the further away from you, further back would be the ones that maybe not.
Right. Okay.
Like a Willie Pete or a HE round or whatever. You want more of the well, in modern terms, more of the Sabo rounds up front, which would be equivalent to armor piercing in World War II, AP or APDS.
Right.
Yeah, so you could basically load any of those 8 rounds.
Okay.
With reasonable similarity in time, okay? Because they're accessible. That's why it's the ready rack. But it takes a bit of time and effort, which I have reflected in my game, American Tank Ace. And yes, Kabuki Kid, that's what this game is. And I might do modern. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this one goes. You know, don't count your chickens before.
Come on, it's gonna go pretty good.
Well, we'll see. But I certainly am not going to have any stupid, you know, unrealistic rules, because it's kind of like me reliving my 20s and 30s here. Oh yeah, I remember that. I'm not going to have anything that you couldn't actually do as a tank commander. Let's put it that way, because I've done it. So I try for realism as it is. You know, it's one thing to research a topic, you know, let's say on Zeppelins, and you research a whole lot and you realize, okay, I think I can accurately represent this in the game. I didn't have to do as much book research in this game. I mean, I did on specifics of the Shermans, because obviously I've never commanded a Sherman, but because I do understand how tanks work, it made it so much easier. It was actually kind of nice. Well, Nathaniel, I am familiar with the 761st. You could certainly play them in the game. I actually don't have individual battalions. There's just so many of them. So I'm probably not going to go there specifically. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to make any political statements here. But anyway.
Hey, and you know what?
I mean, you could play them. You would be able to play the 761st without question. It's just there's so many the same. I'm sure I'm going to get some hate mail from people, not about that, but like Patton, the 37th Tank Battalion, which was Creighton Abrams unit. You know, I don't have them in there either. That's probably the most famous tank battalion that we had. I mean, you can play them, but it doesn't, so far it doesn't work that I have individual battalions, but maybe I'll go there. That's actually not a bad idea, Nathaniel. I'll look at that.
Now, you mentioned the Abrams tank, obviously. Now, how confident are you with the capabilities of a tank like that once you're in it?
Well, let me put it to you this way. There was a Sable round that went through the front of an Iraqi T-54 and came out the back. Through the armor, through the turret basket, through the engine.
So
we were pretty confident. The thing that was actually crippling to the Iraqis wasn't so much that we were also outgun them. Oh, and that brings me at the point. Don't let me forget about penetration. The Iraqis' night vision was only good out to like 800 meters. Okay, and they had IR stuff. Okay, our thermal sights could go out to 2,500 meters. So when the large tank battle I was in, the Objective Norfolk, which some people have said is the second biggest tank battle in United States history, whatever.
Yeah, I looked it up. Yes, it is.
All right, well, it was pretty spectacular, I can tell you that. In fact, that poem I wrote was based on that tank battle. But thermal advantage was just crippling because we were just crushing these guys at like 2,500 meters. And they couldn't see us. They could see the muzzle flash, but I mean, so, and even though they were dug in, we had what we call miles piles or dirt piles.
Yeah.
Sabo around.
Didn't matter.
No, you can see it. Yeah, it'll go through a couple feet of dirt and through a tank. You can see their vehicles so clearly, and it's 2,000, 2,500 meters, and BMPs and T-72s, and it was just a crushing advantage. So the thermal advantage was actually the biggest thing we had going for us. But let me go back to you about penetration too. I've played a lot of World of Tanks. I'll admit it. All right, and I've enjoyed it. Great game, a lot of fun. Okay, but you do not nibble a tank to death. All right, in that game, it's like, ooh, I hit him. He took 17% damage. Ooh, I hit him again. He's up to, ooh, it was a good hit. Now he's at 49% damage. All right. It's like, oh, now he's at 72%. It doesn't work that way. It's very much go, no go. All right. Meaning you either penetrate or you don't. And if you do penetrate, let's just say if you don't penetrate, at best, you're going to do cosmetic damage. You might screw something up on the tank, but again, nothing critical. If you don't penetrate, the recipient just doesn't care. If you do penetrate, I promise you the recipient cares a whole lot. And the issue is, what happens is, yeah, Gilbert, Golan Heights sounds great. There's a great book, by the way, The Heights of Courage by Avigdor Kahalani, and it's a first-person account of Golan Heights, and it's amazing. And I would love to do a game on that. But getting back to penetration, and you say, well, the round is only, so big, maybe it's only going to hurt one guy, right? No big deal. No. Okay. What happens in physics? There's a book called High Impact Dynamics, Penetration Dynamics. I forget, by Zukas. I forget the exact title. But anyway, what happens when a tank is penetrated is that what happens to that armor plate? So we got the armor plate. I guess I'll come in, and the round hits it. Okay, you tracking?
Yeah.
All right, what happens to that armor that used to be here? I'll tell you what happens to that steel or whatever it is, armor that used to be there where the hole is now. That armor is now, when the round goes through, becomes liquefied and molten fragments, and it sprays all around inside the tank. And it does things like put lots of holes in every living thing inside the tank. And it starts fires and possibly detonations. It's a big reason why in the M1 tank, we secured all the ammunition behind a blast wall, so that if the ammo did get hit, it would blow up and out, but the crew would still be safe. But in World War II tanks, you're penetrated, the vehicle's destroyed. No questions. Everybody is wounded, minimum, if not dead. At least a light wound. So I represent that. I mean, in the game, basically, you know, if you get hit, if you get penetrated, you're going to be knocked out. It's really literally a go no go kind of situation. But I have a where the armor, if your armor penetration is exactly equal to the armor value, you might get a critical hit and you knock the vehicle out. So there is a possibility that it could, you know, basically aimed right at the weak point or right at the correct point. And even though you shouldn't have penetrated, you do penetrate. But that's only on those cases where it's really close. So anyway, that is all represented. The game plays pretty fast, like 10 minutes per mission. And I mean, I had a guy actually who survived 288s the first round, and he got a silver star. First battle, I thought this guy's awesome, and he did great. He survived a couple of fires. He ended up looking like Brad Pitt from the movie Fury, you know. But he finally bought the farm in November. It is pretty brutal. I mean, let's face it, though, the issue. American tanks were totally outclassed by the Germans.
Totally.
There's no argument about that. So,
and that's my next question here.
Let's see. No. Ounces, not so much a problem. Non-penetrative hits. HE is. I actually have rules for white phosphorus to possibly cause the Tigers or the Mark IVs to the crews to abandon because they think they're on fire. Yeah, slivers is definitely in there, Hathwell. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, my question is now the game that you're making is we're set in the European theater in World War II. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, obviously, what you just said is that the Sherman was at a great disadvantage at the beginning with the 88s, right?
Yeah, well, true, but 88s are not armored.
Okay, but I'm just saying the 88
the point is you're outclassed in armor penetration severely.
Right. Okay. So will that be in the game in a realistic manner?
Yeah. Trust me, I've had plenty of tank guys not survive more than a couple of missions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a couple of missions.
The thing is, you can survive. I mean, even though your vehicle is hit and knocked out, it doesn't mean you're automatically dead. You bail out. I've had guys bail out of like 4 tanks before. In fact, historically, people say, well, they're not going to live that many. Well, Creighton Abrams, 37th Tank Battalion, he was on his 7th tank by the end of the war, an EZ-8. He started with an M4 Sherman, and it ended up with an M4A3E8, aka the EZ-8, and his first tank was called Thunderbolt, and that tank was called Thunderbolt 7. So
Jesus.
All right, so you get knocked out a lot. Yes, getting knocked out is part of the game. Now, you don't always survive, in which case it's time to restart. But
so how are you going to work that mechanic?
Well, now let me tell you. Okay, another thing people don't understand is the huge part of the game is getting flank shots. All right, because depending on the design, and they're all different. 80% of a tank's armor plate is in the frontal 15-degree arc. Okay. There's a story of a King Tiger being knocked out by an M5 Stuart light tank in the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay.
You want to hear how?
Go ahead.
The King Tiger drove past on a wooded road. This guy was hiding by the side. They're like, they zoom out, boom, 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 punched a whole bunch of rounds in the guy's engine from directly butt 6. I mean, it's literally the movie Achilles Heroes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oddball. I got to shoot it in the ass from point blank. Well, that's actually how they did it. But in the game, the point is that flanking is critical. If you can't penetrate the guy's armor. So there's rules for you to get a flank shot, but you expose yourself to flanking fire from other people, potentially. Flank armor is nowhere near as thick as the frontal armor or the frontal turret armor. And so you got to try to get a flank shot. you don't necessarily, and sometimes it's just you can't do it because you'd expose yourself to the other tank, and that's would probably be not so good. No, Tom, it's here. You want to see the game? There it is. That's my prototype. We're working on it. It actually made the catalog. I guess Bill was excited about it at a Compass game.
Obviously.
Yes, similar to Patton's Best. People are going to draw similarities, and there had to be, unfortunately. But it plays. See, I have Patton's Best, and I know this is going to be heresy to a lot of your tanker patrons. Okay, it just didn't do it for me. I really disliked Patton's Best a lot. It's just too squirrely and too much of the dice rolling with percentage dice and
too fiddly.
Yeah, maybe and tedious. I just thought it was tedious. So my design objective really for this game, American Tank Age, which this was not supposed to be the American Tank Age show, but so be it. My design objective was to sort of like, because I was literally asked by a fan, please redo Patton's Best, but make it like your other games, America Bomber, Hunters, Interceptor Ace. What I'm like, and like I said, I shied away. All right, finally bit the bullet and decided to do it. So my design objective was to make it sort of like Patton's Best, but clean and playable and fun, and yet, well, not just historical, but I don't know, logical. I forget what the word to say is. Realistic, more realistic. Okay, so. And again, at a certain point in time, for example, Patton's Best, I think, was too realistic in some regards for all these dice rolls that they just didn't. It just wasn't worth what you got out of it. Wasn't worth all the effort to put into it. I mean, there's a reason. It's kind of like there's a dozen different places on tanks. There's upper hull. There's lower hull. There's side. There's upper turret, lower turret, the rear. There's a dozen different armor areas to hit, and of those, they're all angled at different angles, and there's a lot of painful mathematics involving that Pythagoras dude as to far as to how much armor that really is when it's angled. There's a reason we roll dice at a certain point in our lives, and so I wanted it to not be so abstract, but to just be cleaner and play simpler, and yet retain realism and accuracy and historical accuracy as much as I could.
Okay,
but to make a cleaner game and make it playable. And this thing, it's sort of the same approach I took America Bomber to B-17, Queen of the Skies. Love that game, by the way. But America Bomber, besides being, the evil Queen of the Skies in reverse, I cleaned up several of the combat routines where it just didn't matter. And this way it just ran faster and cleaner. So I kind of tried to have that approach with American Tank Ace. And the testers are playing with it right now, and most of them are liking it a whole lot. So that was greatly encouraging to me.
Now,
I'm being the artistic type. I'm always, is anybody going to like this?
Now,
the first thought that goes through my head, but
Greg,
yeah.
Will there be different levels of difficulty in this game? Because please make the game brutal, realistically brutal. Make it, but.
Trust me, it's not. It's brutal. It starts off brutal. Let's put it that way. You're in a Sherman and you're fighting Mark IVs, and it's actually, there's a huge amount of random German vehicles you can run into, reconnaissance vehicles. The first couple of months of the game are in bocage.
Okay.
Essentially, and the infantry just. I remember once I rolled up a mission. This is great. I rolled up a mission. I'm like, okay, I got 2 infantry. I have quote unquote gimme missions because you have to live long enough to get your combat skills. So I have gimme missions in there. I don't think there's anything wrong with that because in reality, these tank, they didn't run into an SS Panzer Grenadier battalion with attached King Tigers every other day. It's not realistic. Shermans didn't have that many tanks. So in the game, you're gonna run into what I felt was realistic amounts of, sometimes you run into just infantry, or a couple infantry and a AT gun or two, or maybe a recon vehicle, or a self-propelled gun. Got Hetzers in there and all that stuff. All right, so I roll up a couple infantry. I was like, this is good start, because this is a freebie experience point here, right? Roll up, blocage, point blank. Suck a couple Panzerfaust, buddy. Now you look like Brad Pitt, So anyway, it was yes, but it's plenty difficult. I certainly have I haven't quite finished all the optional roles. I may have something. To be honest, Dan, I hear what you're saying, but I haven't felt the need to make it more difficult yet.
Okay. I mean, you know.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty freaking bad as it is when you're fighting against. Of course, you can kill a Panther with a Sherman, but you got to shoot it in the side. And
another Greg,
which I did do once, which was cool. But it takes all this into account. What's real in a tank battle, and I'm just lucky that that's my background. I'm doubly blessed that I was given the opportunity to make my first war game, and I got such great support from John Krantz and GMT, and I'm just blessed that I got lucky with my first design, and I've been able to go forward with that. But I think this will be a good design, because again, I literally have experience in the area, and not everybody does. So,
and that's why I say you're an expert on this. And and your games, and you said you played a lot of D&D when you were in college. Okay, now
no, I said I played too much.
Okay, so, and I always sensed that you wanted to go in there in your solo games, like you wanted to have an RPG type element.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, in American Tank A's, I added tank school. So you have to go to Fort Knox, okay? And then at Fort Knox, you do gunnery training and mobility training, and then you also have to decide how to spend your spare time, whether you want to go hit the books, and you get a skill discount if you spend your spare time studying, or you can spend your spare time working out. So that if you're a stud muffin there, and so what happens the first time you get hit, if it's a KIA, it becomes a serious wound. And if it's a serious wound, it becomes a light wound. So you either work out, or you get smart, or you can go drinking too. Which, by the way, I'm sure that's your well,
that's fantastic.
Well, that'll be for you, because what happens there is if you go drinking, you get into a bar fight, and you get a prestige point. You get notoriety for being a badass. All right, it hurts your first promotion chance, but it actually gives you a prestige point, because they think, this guy's a fighter.
Now, what anyway, is it an instant win if you get into a bar fight, or you got to roll where you get beaten up, or you beat up a guy?
Well, it's a little simpler than that, but bar fight is one of the three options. I would also say, getting back to the original topic of what we're supposed to be talking about, the human dimension. I give a shout out to your host here, good old Duce. Dan, when I met Dan at WBC and we played Western Front Ace, I had a prototype of my World War I airplane game there. And he got to the point where he was sort of at a draw with this guy. He had knocked out the guy's gun.
Not a draw. I had the guy.
Guy all right. The point is, Dan said, well, I could just let him go, right? Gallantry. And Dan came up with his gallantry rule. I jumped all over this. I was like, you're brilliant. So I put that is in the game, thanks to Dan. He's the one who thought that up. See, hey, I might have my flaws, but at least I try to give credit where it's due. Okay, I mean, I may have other issues. I'll admit that.
Yeah, man.
But the thing is, the reason, and that's one of the reasons I absolutely loved that rule. And it's in there. So if you let a guy go because you've knocked out his guns, which happens sometimes, they could in World War One. So this is a historic. Number one, it's historical, and number two, kind of shows that human dimension.
Mm-hmm.
To warfare, which isn't always present in games, and it really should be.
Well, I mean, I've won the guy. His engine's shot. He's basically gliding. I've won.
Yeah.
So,
why not?
Why should I kill him? It's not
and yes, Timon, American. We're still working on it. The design's close to complete. It's being tested. Bill from Compass, the owner, was just hot to trot to put it in the catalog. I guess that's why it's in the catalog without a picture of the game, because there is no picture yet for it. Although I don't know if anybody is familiar with Matt White.
Of course.
Oh, you know who he is? Okay.
Of course.
All right. So if you know who Matt White is, he's rules are gone too. Matt's gonna do the art for the tanks, at least in the game.
Fantastic.
All right. Well,
fantastic.
If that passes your sniff test, then good to go.
Oh, absolutely. I love his work. It breathes. For some reason, it breathes. I see it move when he has a tank. He does movement very well.
He does do nice work from what I've seen of it so far. So I'm actually probably next week, meaning tomorrow, the next day, I'm probably going to get in contact with Matt again and tell him time to start on the charts. But Bill might have jumped the gun a little bit by putting it in the catalog. But they have to do those stinking catalogs so far in advance. So
absolutely.
I don't blame him. But, he's not too far off base, because I am actively working on this game, and it is close to being done on my end.
Nice.
So it will certainly hit the street in 2021, certainly in the first half of the year.
Now, is there
what helps is it doesn't have any cards, so it doesn't have to do the China boat thing.
And it's funny, eh? I've come full circle with Compass completely since Bill has started to speak on the Compass Live with John Krantz.
Yeah.
And the thing is that he explains stuff. It's like, look, some of these games, yes, they are expensive, but they're done in the USA. They're done locally. So I'm supporting these guys. And you know what? I shop locally in my area.
Yeah.
And how can you blame the guy? Sure.
Well,
and I'll pay extra. I'll pay extra.
I've been accused of being a Compass cheerleader. All right.
Well, I mean, what?
I've been published by technically, GMT and Compass. I kind of switched to Compass sort of by default, because when John Krantz got hired by Compass, I sort of got dragged along by the coattails. But, having said, and GMT are great folks, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Love Andy, love Tony. They've treated me wonderful. No complaints with GMT. Obviously, they are the 800-pound gorilla in our
industry. Well, I'm not comparing.
Yeah, but having said all that, Compass treats me great. They give me great support. And, Bill, at the end of the day, it is a business. I mean,
yeah, of course.
If we don't support these guys, and I'm a war gamer,
Yep.
I mean, if we don't support these guys, we got nothing.
No.
We're going to have just, so we need to support our companies as best we can. But the thing that's so cool, I mean, I have artistic freedom with Compass, and that means more to me than the money.
Of course, man.
Not that I get much money, but the point is, one could argue it's de facto more important than the money, because the money is close to nothing.
Artistic freedom is fantastic.
Well, I go, I want to do American Tank Ace. What's Bill's response to that? Well, let's analyze and see if the market's ready for it, or is this smart? Or no, he doesn't say it. What was this for? Where's my prototype?
That's fantastic. And,
Who do you want for an artist? You know, I mean, I get that kind of support from Compass. So why wouldn't I be their cheerleader? You know,
rightly so.
Not to putting GMT down, because again, they've treated me really well too, and they're class people, and everybody knows that. So I don't even need to say that. Awesome. But I'm just saying, if people want to know why I'm a Compass cheerleader, I mean, there it is. You know, how could I not be? So they treat me well. They support me. I mean, it's like, you know, I make my prototypes. You know, it's like I make my prototypes. They send me caved in boxes, you know, factory seconds. So they send me these boxes, and I use them to put together my prototypes.
Yeah.
And you know, I said, hey, I need 6 boxes. You know, next 3 days later, 6 boxes show up. You know, that's the kind of support I get. So
that's
again,
awesome.
you know, that's why. I mean, I hate to babble on about that, but it's a nice relationship, and I'm really happy with it, and I'm hoping, and it motivates me. You know, I want to do a good job for Bill, you know, and especially John too. So
I'm very happy you have that relationship. I wish me as an artist, I would have that open book with as a composer with I don't know, the Queen Elizabeth or something, whatever.
Well, aren't you the boss of No Enemies Here? At least you give yourself artistic freedom when you.
You know what? I never thought about that. You're right. And so, okay.
You can't bitch about that too much. But
Greg.
Anyway, so
Greg.
Yeah, I think the human dimension is, just to wrap it up, is really important.
Yes.
Because these, they're little cardboard squares, but in reality, they're not robots. So if you can account for it in a game where it's appropriate, again, you know, war in Europe maybe not appropriate, but in games where it is appropriate, I think it's very important. And so that's why I try to put it in. But I got my hands full. I got a bunch of prototypes I'm still working on.
Well, Greg, when I used to play Panzer Leader when I was 15 years old, I remember reading the chit information in the back of the book, and it said that this unit has 15,000 men, and I thought, holy cow, I'm not just gonna send 15,000 men to get killed. I can't do that. And I've never won a game.
Yeah,
I've always.
Well, it reminds me of back in college. It was either Yaquinto or maybe Flying Buffalo games. One of those two had a little newsletter they put out, and they had a little funny article once where the headline was "Millions Slain in Bizarre Dice Rolling Ritual."
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's when you play the larger scale games, it does blow your mind. I mean,
blows my mind.
You know, a core, 40,000 people.
I can't do it.
And you're moving this little cardboard thing, and it represents 40,000 people. So
can't do it.
Well, that's why we have abstraction to it.
And tactical games. I prefer tactical games because it's more personal, and I'm more in control of what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, now, any other last questions of me before we wrap up? Or
the peanut gallery. Anybody have a question for Greg?
Yeah.
And Greg, I
answer him as I saw him flash up. I know I missed a couple.
I appreciate so much that you did this. I know it's a sensitive subject, and I'm glad you did it.
It's fine.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Well,
it seems that we don't have. Let's see here.
Are you going to redo this on your show?
This is going to be on my show.
Not
on my show.
Is it taped or whatever?
This is live. It will be taped.
That's what I meant. I realize we're live right now, but
yeah. So it's going to appear 2 days on my YouTube channel, but not on my show. It's going to be on In Conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just be sure to edit out all the parts where I say stupid stuff.
I can. No, this is live. And
anything that makes me look like a dork, take that part out.
no, man, I don't. Think
no, it's fun. This is good fun.
I think you're a beautiful man.
Yes, Chester.
I'm glad I
my
met
pleasure.
you, man, and I can't wait to meet you again. You were the first person that I met at WBC. You were like, Dan! And I was like, Greg! And you took me away and you said, let's go play my game. And I thought, what the hell? Let's go do it.
Hey, aren't you glad you did?
I'm so glad I did.
That was a fun game. We had fun with that. I think that's going to be like my magnum opus.
Well, I mean, you were surprised that I actually that I won in 10 minutes. You were like, well, dang.
See, that's it. You got, but that's important for me to know because it means it's not so grossly difficult to learn how to play. There's certainly a lot of subtleties to the game, but you could get your feet wet right away. Oh, by the way, do you remember your little arm wrestling stunt with Grant?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on Facebook, Grant says to me, or said, "Oh, he's elderly." Called me elderly. I was like, "All right, this elderly guy challenges you to a 2-mile run at the next WBC." So I always wonder how you got to that arm wrestling thing, and now I know Grant's a troublemaker.
Yeah, no, Grant's a big bear.
He is. I love those guys, by the way.
Yeah, me too, man. I rib them so much. Oh my God, I lace into them, and people must think I hate them. I love those guys, man. They're great.
It's a small community. We all need to sort of take care of each other.
Absolutely. So, Greg, stick around. I'm going to do my outro. People, thank you for asking the questions. And Greg, stick around. So here we go. Hasta la vista, baby.